We keep walking. At 52, I finally said those words out loud. Words I had swallowed for 30 years. And it all started with a Sunday morning and the smell of coffee. Grace woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the distant sound of church bells ringing across the valley. Sunday. Her first official day as a full-time employee at the Maple Cup. At 52, my back wakes up before I do, usually to complain. She lay in bed for a moment, letting the reality settle in. 6 weeks ago, I rolled into this town with divorce papers on the passenger seat and no idea what I was doing. And here I am. She had a job, a friend, a man who had waited 30 years and was still waiting, patient as the oak tree in her mother's yard, and a daughter who had finally learned to let her mother be human. If the church ladies hear about my new job, I will have 3 casseroles on my porch before supper. Her phone buzzed. A message from Emily. Emily. Good luck today, Mom. Knock 'em dead. Well, not literally. They are mostly elderly. Be gentle. Grace laughed and typed back. Grace. I will try not to give anybody a heart attack today. Love you. She set the phone down and looked around the room. Her mother's room. Her room now. The wooden box Jack had given her sat on the dresser, the carved rose inside catching the morning light. Beside it, her mother's letter, carefully refolded, treasured. Here's the thing about new beginnings. They do not feel new at first. They feel terrifying. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and choosing to jump anyway. She said softly to the empty room. Grace. Okay, Mom. Here goes nothing. She grabbed her things and headed for the door. All right, Grace. Lipstick, keys, courage. And Lord, let us hope I do not set the espresso machine on fire today. A day at the Maple Cup. The cafe was busy that morning. Sunday in Willow Creek meant church crowds, family brunches, and tourists passing through on their way to somewhere else. Grace worked the counter with an ease that surprised her. Her hands knew the machines now. Her smile came naturally. The names of the regulars lived in her memory like old friends. Sarah passed behind her. Sarah, look at you back there, like you were born with an apron on. Grace laughed. Grace. Oh, I am just faking it real good, Sarah replied. Sarah. Honey, that is what we are all doing. The trick is to keep pretending till it finally sticks. A customer approached with a complicated order. Customer. Decaf, half sweet, oat milk, caramel drizzle. Please. Grace smiled and nodded. Mercy. Honey, that is not coffee. That is a whole cry for help. But she made it anyway. I used to think belonging somewhere was about the place. Turns out it is about the people. And maybe about finally letting yourself be seen. Around noon, the door chimed. Jack walked in. He was dressed nicer than usual. Clean shirt, hair combed, the kind of effort a man makes when he wants to be noticed. He stepped up to the counter. Jack. Coffee. Black. Grace smiled. Grace. Black coffee again. Jack. You drink that stuff like it is a personality trait. Jack shook his head. Jack. Well, it has worked 50 years. Do not fix what is not broken, Grace said. Grace. Because change is good. Jack leaned closer. Jack. Some changes help. Others are just trouble dressed up in new shoes. His eyes held hers. Sarah watched from across the room, a knowing smile on her face. Jack asked. Jack. What time do you finish? Grace said. Grace. 3, Jack said. Jack. I want to show you something. I will be waiting out front. Grace poured his coffee and set it on the counter. Grace. I will be there. Promise. He took his coffee and sat by the window, content to watch her work. Content to wait. Content in a way that only comes from knowing exactly where you want to be. There is something about a man who waits. Not because he has to, because he chooses to. That kind of patience does something to your heart. At 3:00, Grace hung up her apron. Sarah caught her arm as she headed for the door. Sarah, go on, honey. Men like that do not wait forever. Well, except this stubborn one. Grace laughed. Grace, you are impossible. Sarah smiled. Sarah, and you are glowing, honey. Do not think that slipped past me. The Ridge. Grace stepped outside. Jack's truck was parked at the curb. He leaned against it, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Jack, brought a little something for the ride. They drove out of town, past the old theater, past the farms with their green fields stretching toward the horizon. The radio played softly. Simon and Garfunkel, Homeward Bound. You know you are over 50 when the radio plays the same songs you cried to in high school. And they still hit. Grace watched the landscape scroll by, feeling something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe. Or something close to it. Jack turned onto a narrow dirt road that climbed up the ridge overlooking Willow Creek. They parked at the top and got out. That view just knocked the breath clean out of me. The entire town spread out below them, nestled in the valley like something from a painting. The church steeple, Main Street, the winding river that gave the town its name, and beyond it all, the sky. Vast and endless, painted in shades of gold and rose as the sun began its slow descent. Grace whispered, Grace, I forgot just how damn beautiful this is, Jack said quietly. Jack. I come up here when I need to remember why I stayed, Grace asked. Grace. Why did you stay, I mean? Jack looked at the view. Jack. Because this is home. Not the buildings. Not even the people. Just this feeling. The way the light hits the valley. The way the world feels smaller up here but also bigger. He turned to her. Jack. I wanted to share it with you. Because I think you finally get it. What it means to belong somewhere, Grace said softly. Grace, I am starting to. They stood in silence, watching the sky change. Gold to orange, orange to pink, pink to purple. 30 years of frozen time started moving again, like a clock finding its rhythm. Like a heart remembering how to beat, Grace said. Grace, I used to think second chances were for folks who blew it the first time, Jack asked. Jack, and now, Grace replied. Grace. Now I think they are for people brave enough to try again, knowing exactly how much it can hurt, Jack said quietly. Jack, that is the toughest kind of courage there is. She looked at him. This man who had waited, who had hoped, who had never given up on a girl who drove away one summer morning and did not look back. Grace said, Grace. Jack. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if I will stay here forever. I do not know if we will work out, Jack said. Jack, I know, Grace continued. Grace, but standing here with you, watching this sky, I feel more like myself than I have in decades. And that has to mean something, Jack said. Jack, it means everything. He reached out and took her hand, not pulling her closer, not asking for more, just holding. Some things do not need words, a hand reaching for another hand. That is a whole conversation right there, Jack asked. Jack. So what happens now? Grace looked at the sky, then at him. Grace. We just keep walking, one evening at a time, until the road tells us to stop. Jack smiled. Jack. And if it never tells us to stop? Grace smiled back. Grace. Then we keep walking. Jack laughed. A real laugh. Full and warm and free. Jack. I can definitely live with that, Grace said. Grace. So can I. They stood there as the last light faded, hands intertwined, watching the first stars appear. The evening sky was not the end of a day. It was the beginning of something new. A light that fades, but always blooms again. Grace leaned her head against Jack's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her. Grace said softly, "Grace." "Thank you, Jack," Jack asked. "Jack." "For what?" Grace replied. "Grace. For waiting. For hoping. For being here when I finally came back." Jack kissed the top of her head. "Jack, thank you for coming back. At 52, I stopped chasing who I should be, and finally met who I always was. Love does not care about your age. It blooms whenever your heart is ready, like evening light that fades but always returns.